All right, we are back here on Open Line talking about the sounds of Music City, and we have many sounds that make up this city. Katie Rainge-Briggs is with me from the National Museum of African American Music. Mr. Washington will be back, I do promise that. Let's talk a little bit more about the museum, its purpose, and what it is offering now, a year with it's under its belt, which is great. It's off and running.
Yes, and especially since that year was a year of pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
The museum's mission to educate, preserve, and celebrate music, especially African American music, has afforded itself to be a healing property for folks. So when visitors get to come, they get to be out and about, and while learning, really connecting to things that they remember, and that becoming the good times.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really love is in our galleries, in Wade in the Water, when you enter, you'll hear testimonies about how folks came to their spiritual awareness, and especially those who perform these phenomenal gospel songs. You were like, wow, this feels good sitting on this pew in this space, looking at these historical artifacts and hearing how folks made it through.
Right, right. Because music can teach us about history, it can inspire change, it can soothe the soul.
Right.
Yeah, let's talk about particularly the civil rights movement and music that this town was making, and how we see that play out in the museum today.
Yes. So I always believe that music, while it becomes a testimony of the lived experience. So when there is a call for change, music becomes, this is why change is necessary. And music also enables folks to deal with the difficult story and the difficult narrative in an empathetic way. I think that's exactly what the museum does when they're saying, through music, this becomes the historical artifact to educate, preserve, and then celebrate this, the human narrative growth and development.
So very important.
Yeah.
It has to be a part of our culture back then and today.
Yes.
Mr. Washington, come on back up here. This is live TV. We're just going to go with it. I have your microphone right here. Katie, if you don't mind giving that to him. If you would clip it on your lapel. It's so important to hear from you because we have so many people who are wanting to go down memory lane. Thank you. Good return. Let's go to Loretta on the phone line. Hi, Loretta.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just was listening to this program, and I know they're speaking a lot of the blues and what have you, but I sang in a gospel group in the early 50s and 60s, Anita Sherrill singers, and we were lead singers into a lot of the gospel groups that came in, like Mahalia Jackson and the Soul Stirrers and all of these groups that came in, and I just wanted them to sort of mention that
the role of gospel in this town? Is that what you're getting at?
The role of gospel is not really mentioned that much in this thing that's coming on now.
Yes, thank you, Loretta. I appreciate that. We talked about the Fisk Jubilee Singers, and of course they are the superstars of gospel music. But I wonder what you all can add to that about others in this area.
Well, also the Fisk Jubilee Singers are something that, when we think of gospel, and Miss Anita was just discussing that, it does have a different sound. It does take on a different influence of a variety of genres, while it is sanctified music. We were just talking earlier about the Fairfield Four.
Oh yeah.
And how there are so many different gospel groups that the country would declare as the roots of gospel that started here in Nashville. I also want to really ask Miss Anita to make sure she reaches out to the museum, because there are so many great women in gospel, and their stories need to be told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What comes to mind for you, Mr. Washington?
Well, there are a lot of gospel. Well, Nashville was first made up of gospel artists, singers. A lot of the R&B and blues singers were gospel. You know, they didn't start off being R&B and blues. They started off in church. And I got one story. My uncle used to work with quartets. He was always putting groups together and bringing them, you know, up and bringing them into the church. And I was his favorite nephew. and he said, "Now, son, what I want you to do is sing real low. But I want you in the quartet." Because I never had a voice. Said real low. But it started, you know, back then. That's why there are stories concerning gospel and quartets and groups. Because this is the roots.
That's a very important point to say, that this is the roots. While we discuss the influence of African music as roots in which music grows from, gospel music, the idea of testifying, calling on the name of the Lord, etc., is really the roots of all music that we are saying, especially when you experience. That's why we start with Wade in the Water in the museum.
Yeah. When you watch people's biographies, whether it be on TV or at a museum, it often starts with, "I sang in my church choir." Right? Yeah.
Or the process of music being an artist's testimony of experience is so connected to testifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting. We have a few more minutes here on Open Line. If you want to call in, 615-737+ is the number to call. I wonder, tell me about some of the museum's events that are celebrating the 1-year anniversary, what's happening right now that people can take part in and come check out.
Well, every Wednesday, until through the month of February, the museum is free.
Nice.
And but please check out our calendar of events. The museum will.
There's so much going on.
So much going on, and that every Saturday, there, like I said, there is live performance of emerging artists and school groups, etc. If you haven't come to the museum, I guarantee your child has. So. Definitely ask about that experience. And also, there is, like I said before, in our feature gallery for a limited time, is this art show that amazing artists throughout the country, and music is their inspiration of the artwork.
Yeah. I love it. Mr. Washington, I know you wrote some things down that you want to tell what's happening at your museum.
Well, at the museum, we're doing, as I did mention it earlier, we're doing reenactments of different artists and musicians. Nat King Cole is coming up. Ella Fitzgerald is coming up. Louis Armstrong. And Louis Armstrong, I got a story about him. He played with the Tennessee State Band in 1970. He was on the field with the band in 1970, and that was a big homecoming weekend.
Oh, that's
and
great.
And it was a homecoming weekend, and we still have those homecoming weekends.
Yes, those are always a big deal.
We still need to participate and support.
Yes.
Along with supporting the Jefferson Street Sound Museum.
Without a doubt.
So that we can keep the legacy going, keep the museum alive.
And I'm going to let that be our last word. Support is definitely necessary, and I want to thank you both for coming in. It's been a great show.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.